Hey everybody, I'm Matt Williams, Managing Partner at Brand Federation, along with Kelly O'Keefe, the founder and also Managing Partner of Brand Federation, and Joey Dara, owner of Vasen Brewery. We are here for the inaugural installment of Beer and Brands, which is Brand Federation's, I don't know if it's a podcast, it's a video podcast, it's something, but it's something we're going to do every couple of weeks where we're going to travel around to our favorite breweries around our hometown of Richmond, Virginia, and talk about two of our favorite things, beer
and brands.
So, let's talk about Joey Dara and Vasen Brewery. Joey, what are we drinking?
All right, so for you, we've got a Cashmere Tropics. It's a hazy New England style IPA that we ferment with our house Norwegian yeast culture, kind of paying homage to our Scandinavian heritage. So it's juicy, tropical, delicious. And then over here, we got on the lighter side our Radipils, which is what we call a continental Pilsner. It's kind of a hybrid of different kind of European styles of Pilsner. So it's going to be crisp, a little bitter, and just like a very nice hop aroma to it. So
sounds
very
great.
easy drinking.
Tell us about Vasen. Joey, tell us about the brand of Vasen.
Yeah, so Vasen is obviously not English, so it's a Swedish word that translates to your inner essence. It can also mean kind of like a spirit or kind of folklorish animal. So we kind of, as you have looked around our tap room, have a lot of animals and kind of outdoor nature themed design inspiration. So that's where the name comes from. And then, as a company, we're very much focused on our connection with the outdoors, especially in the local outdoor community. And preserving the environment, conservation, and all the great outdoor activities that Richmond has to offer.
So here's the brand consultant's question for you.
Yeah.
There are lots of breweries in Richmond. We're very lucky to have some amazing beers in town. When you think about where Vasen stands in that kind of pantheon of breweries, what sets you apart? What do you want the people of Richmond and beyond to know about Vasen? What's the thing that's the essence of this brewery?
Well, I mean, obviously, amazing quality beers is number one. But, kind of going back to what I said before about our connection with the outdoors, the environment, I think we really try to go above and beyond in terms of not only promoting Richmond's outdoor scene, but also getting involved in supporting all of the local nonprofits and also local athletes that kind of are involved in that outdoor community as well. So we've got our own brand ambassador program where we have people repping our brand and going out and doing cool stuff, mountain biking, kayaking around the Richmond community. So I feel like probably above all things, just that strong connection with the outdoors is what sets us apart.
That is awesome. Now, where's Vasen? Where can people find you?
So we are in the heart of Scott's Addition. So we are on the corner of Roseneath and Moore, and shouldn't be hard to find. We've got a great big glass storefront outside that should be easy to spot.
It's great. Place is amazing. The beers are amazing. Come by Vasen. Talk about beers. If Kelly and I are here, we can talk about brands at the same time. But Joey, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome and cheers.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Joey.
Yeah.
All right, Kelly, let's get to it. So we're coming off a week that saw the closing ceremonies of the Olympics, right? From a brand standpoint, who won the gold medal?
Well, no question. It's Simone Biles. I mean, that's the biggest story of the Olympics, but it's also the biggest brand story of the Olympics. Mm-hmm. What we saw with her was somebody who was at the top of her game, right? She's amazing. She's the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And yet she was not afraid to show weakness. She was not afraid to stand up for what she believed in. And she wasn't afraid to do it in front of the entire world who was assembled to watch her. Yep. As far as I know, it's a first. And it's something that we're going to remember for decades in the future.
It was amazing how what she did reminded you that while she's capable of these superhuman things, she's a human being, right? And she's vulnerable to the same kind of ups and downs and difficulties that we're all vulnerable to. And she wasn't afraid to stand up and say, yeah, I may be the greatest of all time at gymnastics, but I'm still a human being. And I thought that was amazing.
I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
I mean, this is to me something that we're seeing more and more and more with brands and the great leaders who lead them, which is being willing to be human, to have flaws, to have warts, to not be the tallest, best, smartest, but to be who you are and to be willing to stand up and be that. And what it did, I think, is it opened the doors, it opened the floodgates for an outpouring of empathy for somebody who we now realized is not made of steel, but made of flesh and blood.
Yeah, and what better way for us as normal human beings to connect with somebody like Simone Biles? She's not as different as we thought. She may be unbelievably talented at the things she does, but she's a human just like we are, and she's flawed, and she has difficulties just like we are, and that makes her more powerfully connected to all of us. That's
Absolutely.
amazing. That's amazing.
I can't wait to see what she does in the future because
it's gonna be amazing.
she has got our attention.
Exactly, and she can do so much more now.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think we'll look at all of her medals in the Olympics as Act One of what could be a storied career.
Now here's the flip of that, I think. And this is the person who did not medal as a brand in the Olympics. And it's Novak Djokovic, right? So Novak Djokovic is the flip side of the Simone Biles story to me, which is that he showed human frailty and human difficulty, but in a way that didn't endear us to him. It made him feel like a petulant child. Here's a guy who's got everything going for him, that has an opportunity to do the Golden Slam in tennis where you win every major and then you win the gold medal. You're in doubles with a mixed doubles who's never won a medal in her life, never won a major in her life. And he has a fit when he loses the singles match and then pulls out of the mixed doubles final, thereby depriving his partner of a chance for glory, which she may never get again.
Unbelievable, just unbelievable bad behavior. And I think what it reminds me is that at the core, the Olympics are about people doing incredible things or failing to do incredible things. We don't tune into it for athletic stories alone. We tune it into it for human stories.
Yeah.
We tune into it to see the best and in some cases the worst of the human experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's a powerful lesson of the brands and the individuals who rise above. We want to hear more from them. We want to see what they're going to do in the future.
Yeah.
But when you fall short, it's like, no, I'd rather not.
Yeah, and it's a big stage, man. When you're falling short, literally billions of people are watching.
That's right.
It's really tough. So from a brand standpoint, right, the Olympics are a huge marketing event in addition to being the showcase athletic event in the world. Who won the gold from the brand standpoint?
Well, I was mesmerized by what Toyota did with Jessica Long.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about frailty being something that we can overcome and we can show greatness. And by showing us somebody who had all of the challenges in the world yet to face and yet conquered them, became a star, became an athlete, became a performer. I was just mesmerized. I was at the edge of my seat. And I think it said something really nice about Toyota.
Yeah, it was a beautiful piece of film. What do you think it said about the brand? That's what a cynic would say. Is, okay, that's a nice piece of film about somebody adopting a young girl who has her legs amputated and she turns into a Paralympic athlete. What does that say about the brand?
Well, for me, Toyota has always been a brand that's been about great reliability, but it hasn't always demonstrated that it was a brand that really connected with human values in a deep way.
Yeah.
All right, they do things perfectly, they make a great car, but is it a brand that I care about? This made them a brand that I cared more about. A brand that said, we celebrate the human spirit and we build for that.
Yeah, yeah. So here's my gold, and my gold goes to Walter the Cat from Chevy Trucks, which was the most charming, wonderfully done story of Walter. If you've never seen it, it's about Walter behaving like a dog. But the most remarkable thing about this is not that Walter the Cat behaves like a dog. It's the incredible folding back, the back bed of the Chevy truck, right? And there's a line in it that's so perfectly delivered that to me proves, as an advertising geek, the power of great casting, great production, great delivery. When the star of that commercial, looks at the guy who says, "That's amazing," he says, "What's amazing? He's a cat. He doesn't have a workspace." The truck has a workspace. It's just charming and beautiful and wonderful and fun, and I loved it.
I did think that was a really impressive way to showcase a very focused product advantage.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, back to a simple idea. We've got this cool tailgate. It folds down. It can be a workspace. How do we get people to remember it? And I remember it.
Yeah, and it's more amazing than a cat that acts like a dog. And here I am saying, he doesn't have a workspace. All right, done. Chevy wins.
Smart stuff.
Yeah, very, very good. So let's transition. You have an article in Forbes this month called Pivot Points, and it's all about the important pivot points that brands need to be aware of as we move into whatever phase of the world we're moving into. We thought we were coming out of the pandemic. It looks like we're not coming out the way we wanted to come out, which is disappointing for lots of reasons that we can talk about over the next beer. Let's talk about those pivot points. What are those pivot points? One of them was culture, right? So talk about the culture pivot point. What is that?
I think culture is huge, and we're seeing it reshape the way business is actually working. I mean, right now, part of coming out of the pandemic, and as you say, we're not fully out yet, but we are experiencing a significant rise in the amount of business everyone is generating. And consistently across the board, we at Brand Federation are hearing clients who say, I don't need you to get me customers. I have plenty of customers right now. I need you to help find the best and brightest, most valued employees.
Yep.
I think that's putting a premium on your internal culture. We no longer can assume that we can get the employees we want to get when we need them. We have to compete for them even more aggressively than we compete for customers. And when that happens, the tiebreaker is always culture. Are we creating an environment that people want to work in? Are we creating an environment that people feel valued in? And are we welcoming all people of all colors, all genders, and any kind of perspective so that we get a melting pot of the best of the best?
Yep.
And I think that's a big issue emerging out of this terrible year that we've had in the past.
Yeah, there's so much talk about kind of authenticity when it comes to branding. And to me, all that boils down to is making sure that the true culture of your company, whether you managed it into being or whether you allowed it to happen, obviously the latter's not the optimal way to do it, but let's say the culture of your company has to match up with the promise that your brand makes. And if that happens, then the experience you create for your customers is going to be consonant with those things. And that's what authenticity feels like. It's when the culture of your company matches the promise you make in your brand, and that promise is delivered by the experience that I have with your company. And I think that too many people who think about brands don't think about where that brand begins, which is in the culture of the company. And start there. Start thinking there, and then marry it into a brand proposition that you can deliver through an experience. All those things have to sing together.
If it doesn't start with actual internal behavior that is cultivated to deliver a given experience, then it doesn't matter what you spend on advertising, because it won't feel authentic. It won't be heard. If the talking doesn't match the walking, you're toast.
Yeah.
So today, I think you've got to start really thinking about how we build a great culture, one that's aligned around a perspective, a set of convictions about what we believe and why we do what we do. And then if you've got that down, it gets to be pretty easy to talk about it.
Yeah, so culture is a big pivot point. We're at a different place now than we were a week ago, 2 weeks ago, right? That we walked in here to film this, and we were wearing masks, right?
Yeah.
We're all masked up
unmasked.
again, which is frustrating and awful, but for a different podcast probably. But as unpredictable as the times that we're in, if we're sitting here giving advice to the CEO of a company or a CMO of a company, what are we telling him or her to look for? Where are we now? What's happening?
Yeah, I think, I wish I knew for sure the answer to that, but I can tell you a few things that we're definitely seeing happening. We're seeing a rise in people's independence in terms of lifestyle and work. And that's been going on for a while. We've talked about the gig economy. Matt, you wrote a great article about the independent economy, and we're seeing more and more people who are choosing to work the way they want to work, untethered by traditional constraints of employment. Well, that's certainly going to continue. I would be telling CEOs that it's time to follow the lead of your employees in terms of how they want to work, especially given the crisis of talent that we've just talked about. It's time to lean into new ways of working, to open up to accommodate different kinds of lifestyles, different working modes, different times of day, and just let technology be the thing that helps to create a great workforce. Interestingly, what we didn't see in COVID, with everybody working on Zoom and other platforms, we didn't see productivity go down.
Yeah.
This fear that, well, if they're working from home, they're not going to do their work, it just blew up in our faces. No, they worked fine. They got more done. So I think what we're learning is follow the lead of your employees to allow them to live with a greater independence, work from where they want, do what they want, lean into technology as a tiebreaker, and I think you're going to do fine.
Yeah, so where do you come down on the argument that we've all heard in our previous life as heads of creative agencies, advertising agencies, that said, well, we have to go back into the office. That's where that kind of unexpected friction of those conversations happen, and the incidental contact between workmates when they come up with great ideas. Like, where do you come down on that? Is that a reasonable argument to make, to come back to the office as fast as we can? Or is that just a lie we told ourselves for decades?
I do think there is value for people being together in a room. If you think about levels of separation, there's nothing better than being here together where we can talk, where we can see physical gestures and have a conversation. And when that's possible, that's the best. Just like if you're distant from your family and you can be there for a visit, well, there's nothing better than that. Yeah. But you can't always be there for a visit. So next best is getting on a Zoom with mom and talking about her day and your day and being able to see and hear her. Next best is probably getting on the phone and at least hearing the timbre of her voice. And next best is maybe sending an email, which really ain't all that good.
Yeah, right.
The same is true in business.
Yep.
Yes, there are times when you want to bring the team together, especially if you're in a business that's highly collaborative, where you want to be able to walk around the room and connect with people. Mm-hmm. But I think what we found is that doesn't have to be every day.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, remember when Chiat Day did that bold experiment back in the late 90s where they had lockers
up in New York.
They sent her, and they did it in LA too, where they sent everybody home and they said, come into the office when you need to, and you have lockers, and the office is a common area where you can have meetings. And I think they were exactly right and way ahead of their time. I think that's the way we're going to work. I think this idea of we all have to be in the office all the time because who knows who you're going to run into when you walk to the bathroom is just a bogus argument if you take the argument to the extreme that says everybody has to be in the office for 40 hours a week. I think that's bogus. I think like so many major disruptions and changes, innovations, they kind of happened before, but they weren't ready yet. I worked on a client in the early 90s called PageNet. Remember PageNet?
I remember PageNet.
They were like pagers you could carry around on your belt, right? And the idea was that you could send little text messages to people on this pager and they wouldn't have to pick up the phone or find a payphone at the time, right? It was brilliant. It was texting, but it was 15 years too early. It wasn't quite, the world wasn't ready for that
Sounds
yet.
a lot like Slack.
I'm telling you, Chiat Day was right. They were just right 15 years too early. That's the way we're going to work now. And the best companies are going to be flexible enough, like you said, to allow their people to have the lives they want to have, and know that by having the lives they want to have, those people are going to be more productive, more creative, more interested, more engaged during the time that they're working, and all that time doesn't have to be spent in the office. I think it's going to completely change the way companies work.
I think so. We're already seeing some companies who are going back, although the new rise of the Delta variant could put a slower pace on that, but they're going back to the office. But even then, they're going back 4 days a week, 3 days a week, and leaving some flexibility in it. I think that hybrid model is going to be the wave of the future.
Yeah.
Sometime in the office when you need to get together, a lot of time at home when you don't.
Yeah, and if you want to go to your daughter's dance recital, you know what? Go.
Yeah.
So we talk about technology as a pivot point. Kissing cousin to technology is innovation. That's another pivot point you talk about in the article. What do you mean by innovation?
I think the new view of innovation is so much broader than what it used to be. We used to think of innovation as technology, and those things were synonymous. But innovation is really the art of adapting existing things to make them better in a variety of ways. So innovation includes everything from FedEx finding a better way to create an envelope that you can stick your stuff into that already had a label, so you don't have to search around the mailroom for a marker and a mailing label and a bunch of tape, which is never there, or cross out an old manila envelope that was already used for something. Just simple innovation in understanding the way that humans react and behave, and then improving it. I think Oreos did a great job of this.
Yeah.
They took a product that hasn't changed forever, and nobody wants it to change.
No, absolutely not.
They paid attention to the way people use the product, and the fact that once they ripped the bag open, there wasn't an easy way to close it. And they made a resealable bag, which was a significant consumer improvement that drove improvements in sales. But it isn't anything that you're going to see in a big technology show. It's not going to be showcased at CES. We saw the same thing with Amazon. Their greatest innovation is by no means their whirligig kind of drone system that hopefully won't pollute our skies at some point in the future. Right. I mean, can you imagine being at Christmas time in your neighborhood? How many Amazon packages there are?
Like running into each other and falling on your car.
Well, horrible, horrible. But they created one-click ordering.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people talk about one-click ordering, but it is the simple elegance of not having to go and fill in all of your information every time, go through and choose your credit card every time, but just say, you know what, I want this, and I want it now.
Yep.
And I think innovations, whether they're technology innovations, human innovations, or also just innovations in the materials that we're using. I think we're seeing people use wiser materials across the board. Innovations in the transportation systems that deliver those materials. And we're seeing more and more people go to natural gas and electrical vehicles. We're seeing Walmart encourage their vendors to use less plastic and less paper in their packaging. All of those things are the kind of innovations that are reshaping our world. And many of them just don't get credit because they're not sexy enough, but they are good.
Yeah, right. And they reflect a level of customer intimacy that those companies have, that they understand how people use their products and they understand the problems that they can solve with simple little improvements like a resealable bag or a one-click order. So
Absolutely.
that Jeff Bezos can ride another phallic rocket into space someday. Maybe they'll buy him another one.
I'm hoping eventually he decides to spend a little bit of that money making the world better. But
we can hope. All right, Kelly, so I left the most important, arguably the most important pivot point for last, and that was accountability. So what did you mean when you talked about accountability as a pivot point for brands?
I think this is one of the most promising revelations in branding right now, which is that companies can be accountable to the values, the convictions that drive them. They can speak up about those things. They don't have to hide it. And even if those are arguably controversial topics in a divided country, in a divided world, they will still win because they have a point of view. And we're seeing that again and again and again, whether that's Patagonia using recycled materials to create clothing because they believe that there's too much waste in our country and that it's destroying our oceans. Energy companies who are leaning into sustainability and moving at a much more accelerated pace into solar and wind power. We're seeing companies like Nike stand up for people like Colin Kaepernick, even though they know that can be an unpopular position with some. It aligns with their values and they're standing up for it. And what we're seeing is when a company is willing to take a stand and be accountable to a set of convictions that drives it, even knowing there's risk that some people in the audience will be turned off, they still win.
Yeah.
Having a point of view is still better than having no point of view. And that's something that I think is liberating to companies because we've all been living in fear of, I can't show my real heart because I want to make sure that all of the country embraces us, not just half of the country. Well, now we can, and it's okay.
Yep. A wise person once said that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And that what I think about is that if I'm a chief marketing officer, the question I ask myself is not whether I can take a stand for what my brand stands for and believes in at the risk of pissing off 50% of the audience. The question I'm asking is, I know what my brand stands for. Is this cultural conversation that's going on right now one that I deserve or that I have permission to participate in? And what I've seen when I look at brands who've screwed this up, what they've done is stepped into conversations that they had no business getting into. They saw a cultural conversation, they stuck their nose in it, and their nose got smacked. They got pushed out of the room.
Oh,
So
no question.
I was looking at an example where Pizza Hut did a tweet on National Women's Week, right? And they celebrated National Women's Week, and they did a cute little tweet thing with a pizza that's shaped like the female symbol. And they got filleted on social media because people came back to them and said, oh, great, well, what about your pay equity standards? And what about your maternal leave policies? And next thing you know, you got a brand who got pushed out of the room, not because what they said was wrong. All they wanted to do, or they thought they were doing something harmless by celebrating National Women's Week. They weren't allowed in that conversation. They didn't have a reason to be there. Nike standing up for Colin Kaepernick, Nike has a reason to be in that room. And when you're in that room and you have a reason to be, people expect you to have a point of view. And they want to know what you think.
No question. One of the worst things you can do as a brand is proclaim that you care about something when it can be proven that you don't. State Street Advisors created this amazing installation on Wall Street of a fearless girl standing in front of the great bull of Wall Street to represent the power of women in economics and in business in general. But then it turned out that they weren't paying the women who worked for them as much as the men who worked for them. We've seen this again and again and again, this story of disingenuous glomming onto a subject because you think it's going to benefit you. We actually even saw it with Unilever in their Dove campaign where they celebrated different body types, which was great. That was awesome. But it wasn't awesome that Unilever with Axe was actually celebrating idealized versions of what women looked like and how they caved in to men who happened to spray on a little Axe body spray. Now, Unilever, to their credit, they got a lot of flack for that, speaking out of both sides of their mouth, and they have really improved their game. They're doing a much better job, even in their Axe advertising, of representing the truth about men and women and not leaning into those old stereotypes. But what's happening today is that the market is keeping us all accountable. It used to be back when you and I were growing up, because we're old guys, that we watched 60 Minutes and we worried about Mike Wallace walking into a place of business with a camera. That was the worst thing that could happen to you. Well, today, everybody walks into your place of business with a camera. Everybody can distribute video globally in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
And if you are saying one thing and doing another, it's going to come out and it's not going to look really good.
Yep. So there are pivot points that a brand has to pay attention to. They are enumerated brilliantly, I must say, in your Forbes article. So check out the Forbes article, read about the pivot points.
You've had a few beers.
Exactly, I get very complimentary after a couple of beers. So thanks for joining Kelly and me for the first installment of Beer and Brands. Be sure to follow us, check us out on LinkedIn. We're at Brand Federation at LinkedIn. And send us a note. What kind of brands would you like us to talk about? What kind of breweries would you like us to visit? We're here at Vasen in Richmond with Joey and his team. Thanks to them for having us. The beer's amazing. The place is amazing. Come on by. They're right in Scott's Addition. And Kelly and I will see you on the next edition of Beer and Brands. Thanks for joining.
Looking forward to it.